how are we to respond to Hurricane Sandy? Question mark. Okay, and of course Hurricane Sandy has a personal application to me because my son was married in New York City in the midst of Hurricane Sandy, and the fact is that and I had to get to New York, and even though it usually takes me a day to drive to New York, I actually stayed overnight 2 nights. People ask me, how did I get there? Well, I drove to Rochester, from Toronto to Rochester. I stayed in Rochester for 25 hours till the major front went by, and then I went to New York. My wife kept saying, make sure the gas is filled because we're hearing there's some power outages there. We found out it was a very good idea. I made sure my gas tank was constantly filled before I got to New York, and we had a little bit into the episode. In the end, the wedding had to be moved to a new venue. It was originally supposed to be down in Queens, and we had to have it in Washington Heights. We couldn't find a place to stay. All the hotels we had a hotel in Washington Heights. Across the bridge was a hotel at across the George Washington Bridge in New Jersey. And as we came in the afternoon of the wedding, we were told no power. So we had some interesting issues there. Unfortunately, a lot of people who should make it. My other son couldn't get in from California. My mother-in-law couldn't get in from Toronto. A lot of people couldn't make it. People who were booked couldn't make it. Right? Okay, so he was supposed to come in. So the truth is that it was an experience. Luckily, the wedding came off okay. It was an interesting experience. And anyways, so Hurricane Sandy has. Pardon?
They're married.
Yes, they're married. And so Hurricane Sandy came across with has a personal effect. But the question is, how are we to respond to Hurricane Sandy? So last week, someone sent me a shiur by Rabbi, and just what this guy said to me, I was already getting my denders up. Hurricane Sandy, it's because something to do with same-sex marriages. Oh no! Don't blame Hurricane Sandy on same-sex marriages. If you remember Katrina, there was a whole bunch of stuff about what was the cause of Katrina. Right? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Rabbanim came out. America was punished with Katrina because they're supporting Palestinians. Imams came out and said America was punished with Hurricane Katrina because they supported Israel. Other people came out and said, one evangelical said, if you look from the sky at Katrina, when I saw a weather photo from the sky of Katrina, it looked like a fetus in a womb. And it's telling you that Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina, was because of abortion. All these different reasons. One guy came out and said, well, it was right before Mardi Gras. Maybe Hurricane Katrina had something to do with trying to stop Mardi Gras. That at least made a little bit of sense, because, But the fact is that there's an article on our website, on this website, in my commentary section. If you look in the commentary archives, or if you do a search on the website, I deal with Katrina, and I deal with the whole issue of trying to figure out what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying to you. And one of the things I do strongly believe is that this twofold belief system. First of all, the Gemara in Bracha says, if something bad happens to you, you're supposed to look at your behavior. Okay? So we're not the kind of people basically say, it's Mother Nature, it's just occurrence, you're supposed to be mefashir b'maisav. You're supposed to look into your own behavior. But as I pointed out numerous times, is that it's your behavior. Don't tell me what I can't stand is, this happened to me because that person over there did this wrong. And I'm a korban for that person. You're supposed to look at your behavior. Don't try and tell someone else's behavior. Don't say someone else's behavior. You are supposed to look into your behavior. And does it really mean that that's the real cheshbon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How do I know? I don't know what God's really thinking. What I do know is what I can learn from it. So if I should use an opportunity, if something happened, for me to look into my own behavior. So the first thing I had when I heard this, the person gave a shiur on Sandy and had something to do with same-sex marriages, I really said, "Whoa, this is I can't take this stuff. Can't take this stuff."
Well, where do you get that from?
Okay, so the reason he tied it into same-sex marriages was because the truth is, I actually listened to shit. It's not exactly what he says, but what he did say is that, first of all, it was right around another vote in the legislature, New York State legislature, on same-sex marriages, and the guy pointed out an Irene happened the year before, and was also right after a vote on same-sex marriages. So he tied this together and so forth. But the real reason I think he tied it together is because of a medrash that talks about the mabul, and says one of the major problems of the mabul was they okayed same-sex marriages. If you look at the lashon of the medrash, it's like, okay, there's homosexuality, people, they're gay, they do this behavior, but it talks about the great avla of the mabul was not just that they were promiscuous, and not just because they involved in homosexuality, is they actually married people of the same sex, and led eventually to human beings marrying animals. So he says that really was a mess up. It wasn't just a mess of what people did, it was a mess up legally. So there is literature in Jewish thought that is a very negative feeling upon same-sex marriages. Another medrash I once saw that basically said people may have been gays, but no one ever thought of creating a marriage based upon homosexuality. So the truth is that there are Jewish sources that are very attacking of same-sex marriages. So the point is you consider what happened with Katrina and the water and so forth and so forth. Immediately the mabul comes to mind. Okay, so when I heard this theoretical argument, I said, yeah, he's going to quote the medrash and mabul over there, but the fact is let's face it, Kosh Baruch Hu said he's not going to bring another mabul upon us. So, but then again, he will use water. But he will bring water to destroy people. That was a mistake that Pharaoh made. He thought that water would never come against the Egyptians, and Kosh Baruch Hu said that won't destroy the whole world that way. But what occurs is that this argument. But when I actually heard the shir from this Rav, that's not what he says. What he said was something a little bit different. Because one of the things that also bothered me was the fact that the amount of damage that came from Hurricane Sandy on frum communities was major. Okay, and we're talking about communities with very strong, very large frum populations. 5 towns, Far Rockaway, there's places in New Jersey, Yeshivot. They tell stories, Rahman al-Islam, that there was Sifrei Torah just going in the water, and it was terrible. And the fact is, it was from communities that were injured. So what he said was, and that's why I said, same-sex marriages. That's why the frum got it, because the same-sex marriage. Well, the frum did the same. I'm not sure. So the fact is, what this guy said was, it's because the frum did not speak out against same-sex marriages. And on that level, I said, at least you're looking at it, and you're saying that this happened to this because of something you feel was mistaken that they did, and he included himself in the thing. Of course, Baruch was telling me, hey, this is something you should be fighting against. So it's just an interesting argument. A little different argument. It's not because of same-sex marriages, it's because we should be standing up against this in the world. And let me just finish one thing. And then he brought an example from Eov. Okay, there's another medrash that says that Pharaoh had 3 advisors. Okay, he had Bilam, Yitro, and Eov, and said, what should we do to the Jews? Let's throw them in the water. Bilam said, hey, I'm all for that. Yitro packed it from Egypt. He was not Moscow. He said no and packed it. Eov was silent. And the fact is that and Eov's science led to his problems, which is a problem if you learn to Eov and you know that the whole argument in Eov is what did you do wrong, and the fact is that answer is not so simple in terms of Eov, and so forth and so forth. And even why should Eov suffer because he was quiet? But the truth is he was trying to say that we as Jews have to speak up against same-sex marriages. Now, whether that's a reason for sanity or not, I don't know the way Kodesh Baruch Hu thinks. Is it an issue? Well, the fact is you should look at your own behavior. At least he looked at his own behavior and said, this is something within our community, and at least that's worthwhile. But the truth is a bigger problem is the actual question, is he correct that we should speak up?
I just have it's an ignorant speculation.
Yeah.
But in the time when you mentioned the Medrash and it was talking in regards to Noah, there was the idea of God. It was a religious event. When you're talking about same-sex marriage, you can think of it from a completely secular idea. The idea of marriage is more about monetary exchanges than about religious involvement. That's why I'm saying, like, as a Jew, when it comes to these things, let the secular, as long as it stays secular and doesn't venture into religion.
The fact is, you're touching about something else. As you know, you may know that I'm also a blogger in Huffington Post, right? Okay, and if you ever look at Huffington, it's actually HuffingtonPost.ca. I'm telling people over here, but even if on HuffingtonPost.com, the American Huffington Post, if you search for Rabbi Hecht or Rabbi Ben Hecht, you'll find my blogs. And the truth is I dealt with that issue in the sense that I raised the issue about same-sex marriages, and I said, and I basically challenged that, what is marriage within our society today? Okay, and it actually got a lot of responses.
That was a few months ago, I think, wasn't it?
It was weeks ago, and then I responded with another one. What's the role of marriage in our society? One guy wrote me back and said marriage should be a religious thing. I said, where do you think marriage came from? But the fact is that it actually got a little bit of response. I'm a bigot, I'm a racist, whatever it is. Other people actually wrote back in and said, you know, the rabbi is actually asking some very intelligent questions. What's the role of marriage in our society? And that will be part of the issue. Okay, and you're right, there's that aspect as well. And it's very, very hard to speak in terms of the mabul. The truth of the matter is, well, the Medrash does point to the same-sex marriage as a problem in mabul. You know, Rashi right on the pasuk, right from the pasuk, is chamas, that the Kodesh Baruch Hu saw was chamas. It was violence and theft. That was really the straw that broke the camels. Broke the. That's the language chamas, right? The language in the Chumash is chamas, which means violence.
No, we're talking about Hamas today.
Right, I know.
Can you do that also? Like, is that a speculation that's realistic? Because you're talking about speculating about things and bringing your own ideas into it. Can you say Hamas and Hamas is?
You know something? Let me try to say something. Okay. The fact is that you have to recognize something.
Well, in Arabic, it might have a connection.
First, it's Arabic. It's Arabic. It's Arabic, but I mean it's Arabic, and I think it has. I'm not sure what they mean, but I think it does have something to do with that as well.
Violence.
Yes, I think.
Violence,
but there's an aspect in terms of religious thought when you believe in an all-knowing and all-powerful God that there's no such thing as coincidences. So when you see the word Hamas used in the Chumash, you can sort of raise your eyes a little bit and say, okay, maybe it does have some application in our world today. And by the way, that idea is always the great problem with reason and religion, in the sense that God is the great remainder. You know, what I point out a lot of times as people is A leads to B, B leads to C, and C leads to D. It's very, very nice. But what happens when you bring God into it, A can lead to B, B can lead to C, C can lead to D, and D can lead to Z. Why? Because God's the random factor in there. So the truth is that whenever when you're dealing with God, there's an interesting aspect. How, hey, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. You know, anything's possible when you got the all-powerful being. You know, you can it happens. The truth is, you have to balance this type of analysis. The truth is people would look at you and say, "What are you worrying about? God tells us through Hurricane Sandy an idea." Hey, listen. The point is, you have to balance it. If a Kodesh Baruch Hu has hashgacha in this world, then nothing happens by accident. So the truth is, even in terms of my son's wedding, in the back of my mind throughout the whole thing, I had to have an aspect of this is the Ratzon Hashem. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that I forget reason, and I have to deal with it from a reasonable perspective as well. It's a challenge that we constantly have.
Yes.
But so the idea of Hamas, as mentioned by the Mabul, having something to do with modern day organizations who use a similar name. There.
And
but
you're talking about flooding.
Yeah.
What about the tsunami? Was that happening? This is also water.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And the truth is, I don't know. The truth is, I don't know. And a lot of people say, what does that do? This is where you get the whole thing with Shia Leibowitz, that he always had problems with a lot of things, is that Jews only look at the world from a Jewish perspective. So what do you do with the tsunami that basically didn't affect Jews? So then the fact is that, does that mean God's not trying to give a message that way? I don't know.
Usually it's right on top of it within a couple of days.
Yeah.
So
But,
tsunami relief.
right, absolutely, but that was a rational response. But no one was going to say this is what Kodesh Baruch Hu's message is. Maybe it was a message to the Jews to help out anybody, but okay, which is a good value as well.
Should, yes.
But the fact is that this was anyways. Going back to Hurricane Sandy, it comes to an issue that I do believe that we have to try and find a message in it. What that message is, I think each person has to investigate and so forth, or there has to be maybe some communal discussion, but some thoughtful discussion. What this rabbi was introducing was this idea. It happened because we were quiet about same-sex marriages and so forth and so forth. The fact is I'm not necessarily going to agree with him with this. I'm not going to deal with it, because the truth is that once you get into that issue of how we should respond, that's where I get into what I think is a much more complicated situation. He thinks it's easy. Kodesh Baruch Hu is telling us we should stand up and say, hey, our God thinks same-sex marriages is wrong, and that's it. Very, very nice. But the fact is, if you got up and started arguing against same-sex marriages, especially based upon your religious beliefs, you're going to run into other problems. And that really is an issue of how do you apply Torah in a secular environment. How do you stand for Torah values in a secular environment? If I go out there, and this is something I felt very much in my Huffington Post article on same-sex marriages, is that for me to stand up there and say, my religion thinks same-sex marriages are wrong, so another person will come and say, well, my religion thinks shchita is wrong, or my religion thinks this is wrong, or my religion thinks that's wrong, or my religion thinks it's wrong that you only marry Jews, or my religion, whatever. So the point is I cannot go to the world and give an argument that from my religion. So the fact is I have to give an argument in the world pursuant to their frame of reference and what really is this argument in the world. And the truth is we have to recognize that in the world, in this secular world that we live in, we have actually benefited. Klal Yisrael has benefited because we're not persecuted. Okay, when we faced another religion, such as Catholic Spain, right? We were persecuted. What people may not recognize, and I just found out about, I think this year, very recently, that the expulsion of Spain was not just the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. All non-Christians, non-Catholics were expelled from Spain. What was Torquemada's purpose? Torquemada, what?
Convert Spain, wasn't it?
No. It was not a conversion issue. It wasn't an anti-Semitic issue. It was a very simple issue. Torquemada wanted a homogeneous culture. He wanted a world that believes in Catholicism. That's it. He wanted that young kids should go out and not confront a person who didn't share their beliefs. Okay? That's all. Okay? In other words, if you think about it, he didn't want... one of the... I forget who says it, but one of the major Jewish historians makes a point that most Jews don't recognize. One of the great problems that Jews had in the Middle Ages was that they were nice to their non-Jewish neighbors. Let me tell you what their problem was. What does Catholicism say? Okay? And this is prior to Vatican II, and I say this to everyone now. Vatican II changed this. Somehow Jews are okay in Vatican II. I know that when I was a rabbi in Kingston, New York, one of my daughters was born in Kingston in the Benedictine hospital. They were remarkably nice to us. The mamas treated me like a mensch. Okay, I was a rabbi. I was respected. My wife was even asked, "Do you want to take the tselem off the wall?" Because they knew she was a rabbi's wife. Very nicely respected. Okay, when I went to pay my bill, because OHIB only covered part of it, I went in there and said, "Okay, let me hear the bill." He looked at me and said, "Rabbi, we don't charge clergy. Get out of here." And I'm sitting there saying, "What happened to the Catholic Church?" it's like, whoa! They actually treated me remarkably kosher food and this, that, unbelievable. It was like remarkably respectful. So the truth is, I always said I have to one day. I should read Vatican II. I should read Vatican II and find out what change occurred. But the fact is prior to that, it was a very simple idea. In classic Catholicism, which is also classic evangelical Christianity, I mean, Jerry Falwell said this in his book, Jerry Falwell and the Jews, as much as he may have supported Israel and stuff like that. He said all the Jews are going to hell. Why? Because according to Christianity, the Bible, the only way to the Father is through the Son. You don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. End of discussion. Okay. So the way that the answer is given is that, okay, because they're Satan's people and Satan and this and that and so forth. So what's the best way to maintain this type of ideology? By saying that person over there is evil, is a bad person. That's why he's going to hell. So what was the problem that Jews were? Well, they come into an area, and let's say they move in next door to a non-Jewish lady, a Christian lady, and the Christian lady wouldn't talk to them, not know them, and so forth. But then the Christian lady would get pregnant, and she's in childbirth, and she's screaming, and she needs help, and all of a sudden her Jewish neighbor comes in and takes care of everything. May have some midwifery skills, and knows how to take it. And then after birth, takes care of the baby, and so forth and so forth. And this non-Jewish lady is saying, "Well, this is the devil and devil's people, and they're so nice. What's going on over here?" And after a while, she gets to know the Jewish person, and the Jewish person is a very nice person, helps them out, is a friendly person. So the Christian is walking around. I don't get it. Why is she going to hell? Why is she going to hell? She's not a bad person. So she goes ask the priest and says, "Priest, I got a problem. My Jewish neighbor, wonderful human being, such a kind person, giving person, and so forth and so forth. She's just wonderful. I don't get it. Why is she going to hell? She doesn't believe in Jesus." Okay, she doesn't believe in Jesus, but she's a nice person. She doesn't deserve to go to hell. Because a person says, "Hey, listen, because you don't believe in Jesus, that's why you're going to hell?" I can understand murderers going to hell. I can understand rapists going to hell. But going to hell because they don't believe in Jesus when the person's a really fine person? If I told you that a good that's why you get issues where even the Meiri talks about this in terms of Oivei Avodah Zarah are people who have to be barbarians. But once a person is no longer a barbarian, it seems from the language of the Meiri that the person can't be really an Oivei Avodah Zarah. Okay? I mean, the fact is that because, hey, he's a good person. He's an ethical person. So here's this person, a very good person. I don't get it. So this priest's got a problem. So you're doubting the religion. Priest goes back to his bishop. Bishop goes to the archbishop. Archbishop goes to the cardinal. We got a problem. These Jews, they're not playing right fair. They're actually playing nice. They're actually being nice people. We can't keep up this argument that they're the devil's nation if they keep acting like this. So therefore, I got this answer. And this is one of the Jewish historians, I forget which one. Here's the answer. Let's persecute them even more, make them angrier. Let's get more. Until finally, hey, there's only one answer for it. So we look and say, look at Dan Yitzchak Barbanel, he was so good to Spain, he helped out the Spanish people, he did this and he did that, and the Jews, they helped out the Spains, and so forth and so forth. This was driving Torquemada crazy. That's exactly the problem. You know, okay, and you don't think this exists. I mean, you think about this. If you want to maintain a homogeneous society, you don't want to bring in other people who don't share your values, who actually are nice guys.
What are you going to tell the kids?
Right, what are you going to tell the kids? So therefore, get rid of them. So Torquemada,
exactly.
what?
We get the same thing, like with but he's a goy, but he's so nice, and he believes in Tikkun Olam, and you know, and we share the same values.
And the fact is that is an issue. That's why one of the major differences in Judaism, and I'm glad you bring up this issue, is the major difference in Judaism is the concept of Tinuk Shenishba. See, one of the problems in Christianity is, from what I understand, and I'm not saying I'm an expert on this, so forth, is the fact that it all depended upon faith. If you don't have faith, you're going to hell. If you don't have the faith in Jesus, you're going to hell. In Judaism, if you don't believe in Torah, if you don't have the faith, you're not going to hell. Forget you're still Jewish. I'm not talking about you're still Jewish. Well, whatever it is, the point is that what we recognize, and this is what I believe very true, is that the cheshbon of what happens to someone in terms of their din b'cheshbon at the end of their life is something that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. Because we don't know the underlying psychological factors. We don't know what they were brought up with. We don't know what their concepts were. So the fact is that we don't judge the eternal judgment. Okay? And you see this in terms of Bezdin. In a certain way, you see this in terms of Bezdin. Bezdin, in order to maintain law and order, did whatever was necessary to do law and order. Bezdin HaMelech, okay? The courts of the king, right? David, Shlomo, whatever. They did whatever necessary to do law and order. When it came down to Misa Bezdin, Skila, Sreifa, Cher V'chene, when it came down to a Einish Bezdin, which was understood to be like a spiritual concept, the underlying thought was there, is I'm not a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I don't, because really when you look at what happens when you declare someone an Einish Misa, what you're doing is you're defining him as a Rasha. Okay, it becomes a Rasha. Rasha is a term that we don't want to describe. I'm not going to call anyone a Rasha because I don't know his cheshbon. I know he's brought up. Okay, this guy in the Ku Klux Klan who lynches someone because he's black, right? Do I know he's a Rasha? He was brought up with this mentality. He was brought up with this idea. I don't know his cheshbon. From a law and order perspective, do I may have to throw him in jail or even execute him? It's law and order to protect society. But in terms of the individual definition of rishus, we don't have to do that. And that's the difference when you talk in terms of faith. In Christianity, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell, which means that they lead to the definition that you must really have faith. I don't know what you believe. How do I know whether you believe in Torah? How do I know whether you believe in? Maybe you have some questions. Maybe the questions of legitimacy. In our world of complexity and the lack of a clear thought. I mean, this is the Chazon Ish says this. He says there's no real epikuros today because there's no Nes Nigla. There's no absolute proof for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. How can there be a real definition of an epikuros? Okay, the Chazon Ish says that. The fact is, if you look at the Rambam says the definition of a Rasha, he talks about Bechira, is based upon, when he talks about the Schar V'Onish, it's based upon Bechira. It's not just whether the person's a murderer, whether the person had Bechira to be a murderer. If he didn't have Bechira, then how do you know he's deserving of the Onish? Of the punishment. So the truth is, it's a much more complex decision from a Jewish perspective. So from my perspective, from a freedom of religion perspective for my world, okay, I don't know anyone's cheshbon. I don't know what's going. What?
They were labeled.
Who?
People were labeled.
Who? Well, what were people labeled?
Well, people were put in cherem.
The truth is, even with cherem, it's not so. It's a difference between cherem and rishus. Cherem may be a practical decision. When they put Rabbi Eliezer in cherem, no one was calling him chas v'shalom. No one was calling him a Russia. It's a matter that is necessary to maintain our order in our society. They did that. That's why they approached him so gingerly. Because it's not the same as excommunication, where it's like something different. It's like we have to practically maintain our faith. We have to take steps to keep, let's say, apikoursis out of the community. But there's a difference between saying that someone is not precarious in terms of being a Russia versus, hey, this is a lesson that we can't teach our children. So we have to know the difference. There's a difference between the pragmatic, practical aspect in terms of education and the definition. But in Christianity, they're actually saying you're going to hell. So therefore, what they have to say is you really know the truth. You really believe. You really believe. You really know the truth. And you're just denying it. Okay? Otherwise, how do you know Bechira? How am I supposed to know the truth? And that's why even in Christian discussions, how is someone who's supposed to be an out of Borneo and never heard of Jesus, how can that person be eternally damned when he never knew of Jesus? Some people say Huracaine, that's the person who's really far away from this and he's not eternally damned. But other people say no, he still should have known.
So they have a practical, non-practical approach.
From a Jewish perspective.
No,
from a Torah, I'm talking. This is from a Torah. From a Torah perspective, we have a practical, non-practical approach. From a Torah perspective, practically, we have to, as a society, maintain Shemiras mitzvahs, especially when it comes to law and order.
Yes.
So, someone who's a thief, right? Even the person may not know that even if a person is not culpable under halacha, because you need hasra. Person has to be told it's usher to steal, right? Ignorance of the law is an excuse within Jewish law. Therefore, we can say, hey, listen, ignorance of the law, you didn't know the law, okay? You didn't have bechira, you didn't know, and you didn't know there was an issue about this, and you didn't even know the issue, or maybe you didn't accept the fact that it's an issue, and you don't buy this, and so on and so forth. Therefore, what?
You downloaded iTunes.
Right, whatever. So the fact is that you can sit there and say a Russia in terms of a din Torah that you are a Russia and you're deserving to pay kefil and a fine, that you really need aidis and stuff like that. That's one thing. But in terms of law and order, hey, listen, you may not know of the law, but the same way as in Canadian society, ignorance of the law is no excuse in order to maintain law and order. If I walk around, like I point this out to many people. People say women can't be witnesses. So I point this out. Let's understand what that means. Let's say a bunch of thugs go into a girls' school. Okay? Beis Yaakov or another girls' school. And they lock all the external doors. And they take everyone in the building, right, down into the auditorium. And they line up all the men up on the stage, right? And they have all the women looking up on the stage. And they just take their machine guns and start mowing down all the men. Okay? Kill all the men. Don't touch any of the women. They kill all the men. And then they take their machine guns and they say, okay, everyone can leave now. Okay, we're going to unlock the doors and we can leave now. And all the women start screaming out of the building and so forth and so forth. And they're saying, those guys, they just murdered all the men. Go down there, you'll see the bodies. And these guys themselves go out with their submachine guns and, yeah, we just killed all these guys. Right, So what happens? Well, in terms of their own thing, right, we have a concept in Jewish law that says we don't accept confessions. Right? So the fact that they said they murdered, it's not accepted as a confession. Women all saying that you just killed, you killed all the men. Women are anus. Yeah. So these guys walk around and say, hey, go up to the policeman and say, yeah, sure, we just killed him. Yeah, all these women are good. Yeah, what are you going to do? Arrest me? You have no witnesses, right? What do you think happens? Think these guys walk away free?
But there's other tricks up Beis Din sleeves.
The fact is that there's a law and order provision in Beis Din. There's also Beis Din and Melch. Those guys will be executed. There's no way those guys are walking away free. Because to protect law and order, there's a different situation. Even if these guys say, well, there's no hasra, they weren't warned that was usher to kill. Too bad. They're still held responsible.
So why was
But that's pragmatic and hasra. That's where you get into these issues. But in terms of declaring someone spiritually a rasha, which is what the Beis Din does when Al Pishnai made him because of a rasha, and therefore the rasha is deserving skila, right? That's a din that's a din in rishus, and that really only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do that. That's why Rabbi Akiva always said if he was on Beis Din, he would always avoid doing it, because that's a din in really rishus. Really, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one to do, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one really knew what that person's bechira is. And there's a Rosh also that says something very interesting. He said when someone got an oinus Beis Din, a real oinus Beis Din, what do you think? He really got punished for eating treif, or he really got punished for being Machal Shabbos? If you wanted to eat the Big Mac, right, a person had to give you a straw. Had to say, it's forbidden in the Torah to eat this non-kosher meat and cheese and stuff like that. Okay? It's an Issur D'Oraisa, right? And the guy had to respond. He had to say something. Yeah, I know it's forbidden, I'm still eating it. If the guy was just motivated, the Rosh says the guy's just motivated by taiva. He's just motivated by his keep quiet, right? Just keep quiet. You're not allowed to do that. Too bad. Don't say anything. Don't say I'm makabel your hasra. I'm makabel. I understand it's wrong. Keep quiet and go ahead and do it, and you'll be putter from the onish. What? So why is the onish? He says the onish is because the guy did lahachis. The very fact he says I know it's wrong. You want to go do that? Go do that. Just keep your mouth shut. Okay, that's a cheshbon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's still that's why I say it's mutter. It's awesome. But the fact is, again, they have to understand the spiritual significance of it. Oinish is ultimately, Oinish b'dei Shamayim is ultimately from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the fact is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one who really knows Bechira. We have a court system that maintains some attempt, but we have to understand the depth of that court system. And then we have the issue of law and order. But the Rambam says law and order was only things like Misa and theft. He said law and order, Beis Din and Melch didn't work on Shabbos. I mean, if you're Machal Shabbos, if you didn't have two Adam, you got off, unless you were led to the whole society not working on Shabbos. But the point my point is that within a Jewish perspective, we have a concept. We don't know the bechira of someone. We don't know what they really believe in, what they don't believe in, and so forth. And we have a concept, therefore, of freedom of religion, based upon the fact that that the truth is very complex to know, and we don't know everyone's understanding of the truth, his own cheshbonus in dealing with the truth. That only Kodesh Baruch Hu knows. Therefore, we have an aspect of freedom of religion. But it's different than the North American freedom of religion, which really came out of atheists. From the French people. Voltaire was for sure an atheist. Rousseau, people say mostly was an atheist also, even though he sort of come across being a Catholic, because he would have gotten a lot of problem for being an atheist. Many of the American writers of the what do you call it? The people involved in the American independence just saw someone say Jefferson was really an atheist. Because atheism says the truth is not knowledgeable. Freedom of religion comes about from the fact that your attempt to even perceive the truth is and trying to impose that your perception of the truth is ridiculous. But from our perspective, it's the fact that the truth is complex to understand. We still have to protect freedom of religion. But the fact is we for sure have benefited from the idea that there's a little bit more flexibility in what people are willing to accept. They have a bottom line, which is really an atheist standard of ethics. As long as you don't go killing people, we'll let you do whatever you want. You want to play golf, you want to play tennis, you want to play golf, you want to do your religion with rosary beads, you want to bow down 5 times a day. Hey, what does it matter to me? Do it whatever you want to do in terms of this heterogeneous methodology of doing things. But the fact is in order to do that, we have to recognize that any statement that we take from our religious perspective, bringing it into society, we have to recognize that there could be a repercussion of the imposition of a religious aspect on us. And we've benefited from it.
We have, but
right.
But also, so let's talk. Fast forward to the future. Hopefully, when we do have a Jewish majority and a Jewish-run halachic state, then we're almost hypocrites.
Well, that happens to be a very good question. And I'm going to say something that really brings home the question. Many years ago, still red?
Still red.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still red.
Okay. The Nazi American Nazi Party wanted to arrange a march in Skokie, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I saw the American Nazi guy. He was being questioned, and his lawyer was there. Nice Jewish boy from the SCLU, right? Okay, I don't know if he's Jewish, but anyways, could be. Okay. Anyways, but the fact is he was there, and one of the reporters asked him a question. Said, "Sir, you are using freedom of speech to argue that you should be able to march in Skokie. Freedom of speech. But you don't believe in freedom of speech. If you were in charge of the government, you would never let freedom of speech. So, isn't it hypocritical? Here you are using freedom of speech as your argument when you don't even believe in it." See what the Nazi guy said? He said, if you guys are so stupid to believe in freedom of speech, why not take advantage of it?
Do you not think the Islamists think that way? They're infiltrating in every way they can.
That's true. When I'm dealing with Alex's question, I don't want to be that way. But Alex's question is, are we saying the same thing? If we really don't believe in it, are we saying, hey, we're going to support you doing it because it's to our benefit? But are we really in the same camp? That's what your real question is, right?
To an extent.
Yeah.
But also from a halachic perspective.
You're absolutely right.
With that, how do you relate it to the idea of law in today's order, and then with the benefit, and then...
And my understanding is that a Jewish state would have a concept of freedom of religion, but based upon the Tinishpa concept, in the sense that within our legal system, and I'm not talking just law and order. Law and order is a different issue. Law and order is, listen, this is the kind of society I want to upkeep, and therefore we have to keep this aspect of society. But the fact is, the Tinishpa concept basically is something Judaism does believe in terms of freedom of religion, in the sense that it's not that I'm going to let you believe in any aspect of religion, and it's not going to necessarily say I can let a Avodah Zarah fill up my land, because there are certain issues that I have of things that would challenge my basic belief. So I'm not saying it would be as free as America. However, there is a concept within Torah that says, listen, not that I believe in freedom of speech so you can say anything you want, but the fact is that within our understanding of the world, I recognize the limitations of the human knowledge of truth. And if you don't accept this truth, I'm not going to hold you culpable for it. I'm not going to say that you are evil because you have that truth, or that you are. I can say that I disagree with you. I can even perhaps say you're incorrect. But the fact is, I'm not going to hold you culpable, which means I'm not going to define you as evil because of this, or basically say that you have a limitation, that you are, that I can't respect you doing that. So the truth is from a Jewish perspective, I think if it was a Torah state, without the Mashiach, we would have to include some aspect of tolerance based upon the idea that we can't really prove it. And by the way, that argument is very significant if you really think about it.
In the sense that we can't prove it.
We can't prove it. We can't prove Torah Sinai. We can't go to every person in the world. I can prove to you absolutely 100% that this is true.
Can you? But there's a whole idea. So then, why are we right and they're wrong?
I believe I'm right. The fact is,
I believe you're wrong.
Yeah, but the fact is I believe you're wrong. But the fact is, there's a difference between I think you're wrong and I think you are culpable for being wrong, and I should treat you in that way. I have to respect your opinion even as I disagree with it.
So going on that, wouldn't that go on with the idea of leave me do what you want as long as you don't get involved with my turf?
To a certain extent, it's like that. But the fact is, it's a little bit like I can't impose my position upon you. That's really what it comes down to, in the sense that I have to understand that there's a reason why I can't impose my system upon you, because I can't really prove it. Like, I could take this a little bit further. Like, for example, when people talk about how in Yeshua they marched into, they took over Eretz Yisrael. They just went in there and said, hey, accept it or we're going to wipe you all out. Well, they got the message. Do you hear what Rachav said to the Rachav in Yericho? It says,
Rachav.
What? Rachav, right? Right, in Yericho. Hey, we know what you guys did in Egypt. We know how you exist in the desert. Okay? You had, if you want, the Anani HaKavod completely surrounded Klal Yisrael. They went through a desert, the Anani HaKavod completely surrounds them, so forth and so forth. They come on the border over there, they're outside Yericho, they just hear, hey, 40 years ago, this nation, just wiped out the most powerful nation in the world. Like that, right? And they just live in the 40 years in the desert, and they're growing, and they have this Nani HaKavod, and so forth and so forth. And Rachav says, hey, I got the message, right? Okay? I got the message. So, what exactly was Yericho thinking? I mean, I would sit there and say, hey, I don't think it's a smart idea to start up with this nation. And that's exactly what happened. The truth is that in that world there was no doubt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was around. There was no doubt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu supported this nation. There was no doubt about these things. These were facts on the thing, and the rishus of the Amim were such. Hey, we're taking on God. We can do this. Okay. Well, you can't. And that's why there was absolutely no tolerance. But after that, in our world today, you expect these people. We say, "Hey, it's our land because Kodesh Baruch Hu gave it to us." They are brought up in a religion that says that everything we believe in is false. The whole thing, the Torah was all mishmashed. Okay, that they don't believe in this. That this is what they're brought up with. I'm not talking about. Okay, they're also brought up with hatred and so forth and so forth. I'm not trying to totally make them blameless, but you think you can just go in there and say it's our land and get out of here?
No, Akedat Yitzchak was Akedat Ishmael.
By the way, it's interesting. It's interesting. I just read this. Actually, the Quran does not say that. The Quran says it was the son of Abraham.
That's right.
There is minority opinions. No one around anymore in Islam that actually says that it was Yitzchak. There are some. Okay, it doesn't say Yishmael. What's interesting though is that the expulsion of Hagar and Yishmael, that is considered to be similar to the Akedah aspect of that it was a challenge for Abraham to do. They make the expulsion of Hagar and Yishmael because them. Yishmael is great, and Hagar is the mother of this. Right. So therefore, the fact that Abraham had to send Hagar and Yishmael away, that was similar to that. And in fact, there's some people who say, and from what I was reading about Islam, I just read a couple of fast books on Islam. I don't want to say which books they were, but actually say, and Islam believes that's why Abraham was blessed with Yitzchak, right? In reward for fulfilling God's will of sending away Hagar and Yishmael. But the fact is the truth is that interesting. Okay, but the truth is that Islam does believe that the Torah is false. that the Jews changed it around, and what Muhammad had to do was express the new truth, which is what we're about, which explains where the Quran disagrees with the Chumash. It's to give you the correct version. But all I'm saying is obviously that's something we would disagree with. But I'm trying to say, if a kid's brought up with this from the 5, 6 years old, what? You have to deal with it. So therefore, there's aspects of freedom of religion from the Torah perspective, because we do have concepts of Tish Nishba. It's a little bit more complicated when it comes to issues of the Shabbat Mitzvah. No, but the point is that there is an aspect of it. But the fact is that this idea of freedom of speech, I would not be in the same category as that Nazi who basically was laughing and saying, if you're stupid enough to believe it, I don't believe in that. I believe that there was a value in this. The value was that don't impose your religious belief because you can't prove it, and that I believe the Torah also shares that value, because we're much more educationally oriented.
So going back to things that are adamantly against Judaism, against our values, against our system, like such as gay marriage, abortion, though you can't do abortion in certain circumstances.
So the fact is that we have to figure out. Okay, we have to argue for it. Okay, we have to argue for it, given the parameters. That's what I was trying to say. It's not so simple to get up there and say, hey, we're against same-sex marriages. Okay, we have to know how to argue for it. So we have to come up with arguments of why why it's not a good idea pursuant to their secular perspective, or we have to understand the consequences of arguing for a religious stand in our world. Okay, because we have benefited from it. So the example I gave from in Baltimore, but the Odei Avodah Zarah, who wanted to use, there were pagans in Baltimore who wanted to do animal sacrifices, and it's against animal cruelty laws. So the fact is, some Jewish organizations, Torah Jewish organizations like the OU, the RCA, the Aguda, all came on the side of the pagans, right, to say that religious freedom should allow them to do animal sacrifices, to Avodah Zarah, right? Strange bedfellows. Why? Why should we have to do that? Because we want to make sure that if there's ever a law against shechita, we want religious freedom to be able to say, hey, religious freedom overrides animal cruelty.
So Judaism has become political.
It's very much so. But the fact is the political concept, when I'm dealing with the political concept, is also within the Torah Hashkafa. The fact is, within the Torah Hashkafa, we have to understand that the Torah itself gives us this perspective. It's not just hey, we have to be political. We have to understand the psak. We have to understand the idea. Okay, and that idea is the fact that we have to understand that in our world there is a concept that the emes is not so easily perceived. People are challenging with the emes, and that Judaism respects the challenge of people in finding the emes. Well, except against and that's a big distinction from people who just say we have faith in terms of Christian perspective, and the imposition of the faith, because basically say you do believe this. That's a big difference.